All right, we're going to dive into a topic that's, a little sensitive, but also really fascinating from a psychological standpoint. The everyday habits that might, just might, be a clue to a person's IQ. You've definitely been there, right? You're talking to someone and they are arguing their point with so much confidence, just total conviction, but what they're saying is just completely off. It makes no sense at all. And yet they are 100% sure of themselves. Now, it's super easy to just write that off as, a big ego or plain old arrogance. But here's the thing. Psychology suggests it might be a clue to something much deeper, something going on with their cognitive abilities. And we're going to break down exactly what those clues are.
So, first up, let's look at what's happening on the inside. These are the cognitive traps, the specific ways of thinking that can tell you a lot about how someone processes the world. The first sign, and honestly, it's the most classic one, is this incredible overconfidence that just isn't backed up by any real knowledge. This is exactly that person we were just talking about. There's actually a name for this. Psychologists call it the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a really interesting cognitive bias where a person's lack of skill in an area literally prevents them from even seeing how unskilled they are. And that's the whole paradox, isn't it? They're not just faking it. They genuinely believe they're experts because they're missing the exact knowledge that would allow them to see their own gaps and mistakes. It's a total blind spot. Now, this next one is really tied to that overconfidence we just mentioned. A total lack of curiosity. I mean, think about it. Genuinely smart people are almost always asking why or how does that work? So when that curiosity just isn't there, that's a pretty big red flag. So you have highly curious people who are out there actively looking for new information. They actually enjoy learning. But for someone with a lower IQ, a new idea can almost feel like a threat. So they'll tend to avoid new things, get bored really easily, and just stick to the safety of what they think they already know. Okay, our third cognitive trap is this inability to see any shades of gray. Look, the world is messy and complicated, right? But for some people, everything has to be sorted into these super simple absolute boxes. Psychologists have a term for this too. It's called cognitive rigidity. It's basically the inability to think flexibly. So when they're faced with new information that challenges their beliefs, they don't adapt, they just double down or shut it out completely. Yeah, their whole worldview is based on this idea that something is either 100% right or 100% wrong. There's just no room for nuance or context or seeing things from a different angle. Because, frankly, that kind of thinking takes a lot more mental energy. All right, so we've been talking about how people think. Now, let's switch gears and look at how they act. These are the behavioral blind spots you can actually see, and they're often tied to both cognitive and emotional intelligence. And first up is a huge one, poor emotional control. It turns out there's a really strong link between your classic IQ and what we call emotional intelligence. Being able to just manage your own feelings is in itself a form of intelligence. So what does this actually look like? Well, you see a lot of impulsive reactions instead of thoughtful responses. These are folks who might get offended really easily, or they just can't seem to get a handle on their anger or frustration. A smart person will take a beat, think, and then respond. But someone with lower emotional intelligence just reacts. All right, our next behavioral sign is a big one. The constant refusal to take any personal responsibility. When something goes wrong in their life, you'll notice it's always, and I mean always, someone else's fault. In psychology, this is known as having an external locus of control. It's this deep-seated belief that your life is just something that happens to you, that outside forces are in charge, and that you have no real power to change things. And this really creates two completely different ways of seeing the world. Someone with an internal locus of control, they believe, I make things happen. But someone with an external locus, their motto is basically, things happen to me. It's a total victim mindset, where the blame always goes to bad luck, the system, or other people. And the last behavioral sign we're going to cover is this inability to deal with different viewpoints. To them, a healthy debate isn't an exchange of ideas. It feels like a personal attack. They fundamentally confuse disagreement with disrespect. So when you challenge one of their ideas, they don't hear a logical counterargument. They feel personally insulted. And why? Because actually considering another point of view takes serious cognitive effort. It's just a lot easier to get defensive. So we've gone through all these different signs, from the overconfidence to the blame game, but what's the one single insight that ties all of this together? What's the core idea here?
It really all boils down to this. True intelligence isn't about having a head crammed full of facts or some fancy degree. It's about the process. It's about your ability to be curious, to be flexible, to be self-aware. It's all about how you think. And that brings us to the ultimate kind of scary paradox of it all. The very condition of having a lower IQ often prevents a person from ever recognizing that they have it. Their own cognitive limits create a massive blind spot to those exact same limits. Which leaves us with one last, really provocative question to noodle on. If that very first sign we talked about, the Dunning-Kruger effect, means that you're unable to see your own incompetence, then how on earth would you ever know? The fact that you're even thinking about that question, well, that's probably a very, very good sign.